Homeless black boy saves stranded pregnant woman, not knowing she is the wife of a billionaire. In the darkest corners of our cities, where the lights of hope seem to fade and the forgotten struggle to survive, extraordinary stories often unfold in the most unexpected ways. Imagine this: a cold, unforgiving night beneath a city bridge, where a homeless boy named Khalil fights to stay warm, clutching nothing but his rickety pushcart. His only companion in a world that has turned its back on him. At just 15 years old, Khalil knows what it means to be invisible, to live without a roof over his head or a hand to hold. But little does he know, this night will change everything, not just for him, but for someone else whose life hangs by a thread as the wind howled through the cracks of the crumbling overpass, weaving between rusted beams and broken bottles like whispers from another time. Khalil lay curled inside a drainage pipe, trying to escape the biting cold. Hunger was no stranger to him, neither was loneliness. Yet there was something about tonight that felt heavier than usual, a quiet unease settling deep within him. What he didn't realize was that fate had already begun, weaving threads far beyond his control, pulling him toward an encounter that would test his courage, redefine his purpose, and challenge the boundaries of humanity itself. The story begins with a sound, a faint cry, cutting through the stillness of the night. It wasn't the scurrying of rats or the distant rumble of engines. No, this was human, desperate, raw. Khalil froze, his instincts kicking in despite the exhaustion, weighing down every inch of his body. Crawling out of the pipe, flashlight trembling. In his grip, he followed the sound until he stumbled upon a sight both surreal and heart-wrenching. A sleek silver car, abandoned in a shallow ditch, its headlights dim, its engine dead. Inside sat a woman, elegant yet clearly in agony, her face pale and drenched in sweat, her hands gripping the steering wheel as if holding on for dear life. She was pregnant, alone, and clearly in labor, and she needed help that no one else seemed willing to give. What Khalil did next defied logic, defied fear, defied even the harsh lessons life had taught him about trust and kindness. Without hesitation, he broke the car window, pulled the woman out, and pushed her toward the hospital, using his makeshift cart. The journey was grueling, each step fueled by sheer determination and adrenaline. He had no idea who she was, no clue that she was Rachel Whitmore, the wife of billionaire Jack Whitmore, a name synonymous with wealth, power, and influence. All Khalil knew was that she was a person in pain, a mother fighting to bring new life into the world, and that was enough. This act of selflessness, born not out of obligation, but instinctive compassion, sets the stage for a story that explores themes of invisibility, resilience, and the transformative power of kindness. Khalil represents so many unseen faces in our society, young, marginalized, and struggling against odds stacked impossibly high. His decision to step into the unknown, to risk himself for someone he didn't know, speaks volumes about the strength of the human spirit. Meanwhile, Rachel embodies vulnerability and gratitude. Her privileged life suddenly stripped bare by circumstances beyond her control. Together, their paths intersect in a moment that transcends social divides, reminding us of the shared humanity that binds us all. But here's the thing. When Khalil finally delivered Rachel to safety, he vanished back into the shadows, leaving behind only questions. Who was this boy? Where did he come from? Why did he do what he did? For Rachel, these questions became more than curiosity. They became a mission. As she recovered in the hospital, cradling her newborn son Eli, she couldn't shake the image of Khalil's face. Young yet worn, fearful yet resolute, Her husband, Jack, sprang into action, deploying resources to track down the mysterious teenager. News outlets picked up the story, painting Khalil as either a hero or a mystery, depending on who you asked. But amidst the speculation and headlines, Rachel knew one thing for certain. She owed him everything. Days turned into nights as the search continued, leading Rachel and her team to the very place where Khalil called home, the underside of a city bridge. When they found him, sorting cans into a plastic sack, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, the moment was charged with emotion. Would Khalil accept their gratitude? Could he trust them after a lifetime of being overlooked and dismissed? More importantly, what kind of future awaited a boy who had spent years surviving in the margins, only to be thrust into the spotlight? As we dive deeper into this remarkable story, we'll explore not just the events themselves, but the profound impact they have on everyone involved. We'll see how Khalil navigates a world suddenly interested in him, how Rachel wrestles with her privilege and newfound perspective, and how their lives become intertwined in ways neither could have imagined. This isn't just a tale of survival or redemption. It's a testament to the belief that even in the darkest moments, light can emerge from the unlikeliest places. So, as we leave Khalil standing under that bridge, staring at Rachel with a mix of suspicion and hope, the question remains, what happens next? Will this chance encounter lead to lasting change, or will the weight of the world prove too much to bear? Stay tuned as we unravel this powerful narrative, one that challenges us to look closer, listen harder, and recognize the untapped potential in those we too often ignore. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can spark the biggest transformations. And this is a story you won't want to miss. As Khalil stood there under the bridge, his cart resting beside him, and the envelope clutched tightly in his hand, a million thoughts swirled through his mind. He had spent years surviving on scraps, learning to navigate a world that didn't seem to notice him, unless it was to push him further into the margins. Now, here he was, face to face with Rachel Whitmore, a woman who could have anything she wanted, offering him something he couldn't even begin to comprehend, a chance at a life beyond survival. But what did that mean? What would it cost? And more importantly, could he trust her? Rachel's presence alone was jarring. She wasn't dressed like someone from another planet, but Khalil could feel the weight of her privilege radiating off her like heat from asphalt under the summer sun. Her words were kind, genuine even, but kindness from people like her always came with conditions, or so he believed. For as long as he could remember, the world had taught him that help was never truly free. Still, there was something about the way she held Eli, cradling him close, like he was the most precious thing she'd ever touched, that made Khalil hesitate. It reminded him of his mother, the way she used to hum those gospel songs while folding laundry, the way her hands smelled like lavender soap after work. That memory tugged at something deep inside him, something he thought he'd buried long ago. The next few days blurred together for Khalil. The address Rachel gave him led to a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a place far removed from the chaos of the streets where he'd grown up. There were groceries stocked in the fridge, clothes neatly folded on the bed, and books stacked high on a desk near the window. Everything felt foreign, overwhelming. He wandered through the rooms like a ghost, unsure if he belonged or if this was all some elaborate mistake. At night, when the city lights filtered through the blinds, he found himself staring out the window, wondering if the bridge still waited for him, cold and unchanging, just in case this new reality turned out to be too heavy to bear. Meanwhile, Rachel wrestled with her own emotions. On the surface, she appeared composed, grateful, even relieved. But beneath that calm exterior churned a storm of guilt and gratitude. She couldn't stop thinking about the boy who had risked everything to save her and her son. Every time she looked at Eli, she saw Khalil's face, the determination in his eyes, the raw fear mixed with resolve. How could someone so young carry such strength? And why had no one stepped in to help him before now? These questions haunted her, gnawing at the edges of her conscience. Jack, ever pragmatic, tried to reassure her. "We're doing everything we can," he said, his voice steady but distant. But Rachel knew better. Money and resources weren't enough. They hadn't been enough for her. What Khalil needed was connection, understanding, something money couldn't buy. Back at school, Khalil struggled to adjust. The other kids stared at him, whispering behind cupped hands whenever he walked by. Some pitied him, others mocked him. Neither reaction felt right. He kept his head down, focusing on the lessons, trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible. Education became his lifeline, a way to prove, to himself, if no one else, that he was more than the sum of his circumstances. Yet despite his best efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. The teachers spoke kindly, encouraging him to participate, but their smiles often felt forced, like they were checking boxes rather than seeing him as a person. Only Mrs. Alvarez, the art teacher, seemed different. She noticed the sketches he doodled during class, simple drawings of bridges and carts and faces half hidden in shadow. "You have talent," she told him one day, handing him a sketch pad. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As weeks turned into months, Khalil began to carve out a fragile sense of normalcy. He started volunteering at a community center downtown, helping younger kids with their homework and sharing stories about perseverance. It was there, surrounded by laughter and curiosity, that he realized how much he had changed. Gone was the boy who once believed invisibility was his only defense. In his place stood someone stronger, braver, not because he sought recognition, but because he understood the power of being seen. Still, doubts lingered. Was this life real, or was it just a temporary reprieve before the cracks widened again? The tension reached its peak one evening when Khalil received an unexpected visit from Rachel. She arrived unannounced, holding a small wrapped package in her arms. "I didn't want to wait until tomorrow," she explained, sitting across from him at the kitchen table. Inside the box was a framed photograph of them together outside the hospital, taken moments before Khalil disappeared into the night. Beneath the image were 2 words scrawled in elegant script. "Thank you." Khalil stared at it, stunned. No one had ever thanked him like that. Not with words, not with actions, and certainly not with permanence. His throat tightened, and for the first time in years, tears welled up in his eyes. But just as quickly as the moment arrived, it shifted. Rachel hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a newspaper clipping. "They're talking about you again," she said softly, sliding it toward him. The headline read, "Homeless Hero Refuses Reward, a story of resilience or missed opportunity." Below it was a grainy photo of Khalil, pushing his cart, captioned with speculation about whether he was rejecting help out of pride or mistrust. The article painted him as either a saint or a stubborn idealist, depending on who you asked. Khalil's chest tightened. He hadn't asked for any of this. None of it. All he'd done was follow his instincts, act out of compassion. Why couldn't people leave it at that? The media frenzy escalated overnight. Reporters camped outside his building, cameras flashing like strobe lights every time he stepped outside. Strangers sent letters, some praising him, others accusing him of exploiting Rachel's wealth. Even within the community center, whispers spread. Some volunteers questioned his motives, while others rallied around him, defending his integrity. Through it all, Khalil remained silent, refusing to engage. He didn't owe anyone an explanation, not for saving Rachel, not for accepting her help, not for trying to build a future worth fighting for. And yet, amidst the chaos, a glimmer of clarity emerged. One afternoon, as Khalil sorted cans at the center, a little girl approached him, clutching a torn coloring book. "Can you draw me a picture?" she asked shyly. Without hesitation, Khalil grabbed a marker and began sketching. A bridge illuminated by moonlight, a cart resting nearby, and two figures standing side by side, silhouetted against the horizon. When he finished, the girl beamed, hugging the page to her chest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. In that moment, Khalil realized something profound. He wasn't just a boy who lived under a bridge anymore. He was a storyteller, a survivor, a symbol of hope, not because of what he lacked, but because of what he chose to give. With the climax looming over him, Khalil prepared for the speech Rachel invited him to deliver at the mayor's office. The invitation itself felt surreal, a testament to how far he'd come, yet a reminder of how precarious his position remained. As he practiced his lines late into the night, staring at his reflection in the mirror, he couldn't help but wonder, would his words resonate, or would they fall flat, dismissed as sentimental platitudes? Either way, he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't back down now, not when so many others depended on him to speak their truth. The morning of the event arrived, grey skies casting a somber glow over the city. Khalil dressed carefully, smoothing the navy blazer Rachel had given him, tying his shoes with deliberate precision. As he stepped out of the apartment, the streets buzzed with anticipation. Cameras lined the sidewalks, reporters shouting questions he ignored. For the first time, Khalil allowed himself to imagine a world where kindness wasn't transactional, where humanity wasn't conditional. Maybe, just maybe, his story could inspire others to see what he had always known, that everyone deserves a chance, no matter where they come from or what they've been through. Khalil stood by the window, watching Rachel and Eli from above. A strange calm settled over him. The weight of the day, the speech, the crowd, the cameras had left his shoulders, replaced by something lighter, almost freeing. For so long, he'd carried the burden of invisibility, believing that no one truly saw him. But now, as Rachel looked up at the building, shielding her eyes against the fading sunlight, he realized she wasn't just seeing him. She was acknowledging everything he had been through. It wasn't pity in her gaze, it was respect. And for Khalil, that made all the difference. The next morning, Khalil woke early, the city still cloaked in dawn's soft grey light. He dressed quietly, careful not to disturb the silence of his new apartment. Today felt different, and the air seemed charged with possibility, like the world itself was holding its breath. He grabbed his backpack, slinging it over one shoulder, and headed out into the streets. As he walked, memories surfaced of the bridge, the cart, the nights spent staring into darkness, wondering if anyone would ever care enough to notice him. Those days felt distant now, yet they shaped him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. When he arrived at the community center, the kids were already gathered, their laughter bouncing off the walls. They greeted him warmly, pulling him into their games and conversations. Khalil smiled, letting himself sink into the moment. These children reminded him of himself, not broken, but resilient, full of dreams they didn't yet know how to voice. He began sketching again, drawing scenes of hope. A boy pushing a cart under starlit skies, a mother cradling her newborn, a city waking up to kindness instead of indifference. Mrs. Alvarez approached him later, her hands clasped together. "You've got a gift," she said softly. "Don't let fear stop you from sharing it." Later that week, Khalil received an envelope from Rachel. Inside was an invitation to speak at a national conference hosted by the Whitmore Foundation. His stomach churned at the thought of standing before thousands of people, but Rachel's note reassured him. "This isn't about fame or recognition," she wrote. "It's about showing others what we've seen, that humanity thrives when we choose to see each other." Khalil hesitated, then nodded to himself. If his story could inspire even one person to act with compassion, it would be worth it. The day of the conference arrived, and Khalil found himself backstage, clutching a microphone in trembling hands. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation, filled with philanthropists, activists, and ordinary people hoping to make a difference. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage, blinking under the bright lights. The audience erupted into applause, but Khalil didn't hear it. All he saw was Rachel, sitting in the front row, smiling gently. Eli asleep in her lap. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "I never thought my life mattered," he admitted, his voice steady despite the nerves. "I lived beneath a bridge, invisible to the world. But one night, I heard someone calling for help. I didn't think about who she was or what she could give me. I only knew she needed me. That choice, to step forward, to show up, that changed everything." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "People ask me why I did it. They call me brave, selfless, heroic. But here's the truth. I'm none of those things. I'm just a kid who decided to care. And that's the part I want you to remember. Caring isn't extraordinary. It's basic. It's human." The room fell silent, every eye fixed on him. Khalil continued, his words flowing like water breaking through a dam. "There are millions of kids out there like me. Kids who feel forgotten, unseen. They're not asking for much, for someone to listen, to believe in them, to remind them they matter. You don't need money or power to do that. You just need heart." He ended with a simple plea. Look around you. Who's invisible? Who needs your kindness today? Don't wait for them to cry out. Be the one who hears them anyway. When he finished, the audience rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, some wiping away tears. Khalil stepped back, overwhelmed but grounded. This wasn't about him. It was about the ripple effect of one small act of courage. As he exited the stage, Rachel met him halfway, wrapping him in a tight hug. "You did it," she whispered. "You showed them what real strength looks like." In the months that followed, Khalil's story spread far beyond the conference hall. Schools invited him to speak, organizations reached out to collaborate, and strangers sent letters thanking him for reminding them of their own capacity for kindness. Yet, amidst the attention, Khalil remained humble, always redirecting praise toward others. "I'm not special," he often said. "I just chose to act. Anyone can do that." Rachel kept her promise, supporting Khalil without overshadowing him. She helped him enroll in art classes, where he discovered a passion for storytelling through images. His sketches evolved into murals, painted on walls across the city, vivid reminders of resilience, hope, and connection. One mural, located near the bridge where he once lived, depicted a boy pushing a cart under a glowing sky, surrounded by faces of all ages and backgrounds. Beneath it, scrawled in bold letters, were the words, "Kindness starts here." Years passed, and Khalil grew into a man whose presence commanded respect, not because of wealth or status, but because of authenticity. He never forgot where he came from, often returning to the community center to mentor kids who reminded him of his younger self. Rachel and Jack remained close friends, their bond rooted in mutual admiration and shared purpose. Eli, now a curious toddler, adored Khalil, always tugging at his hand and demanding stories about the cart and the bridge. As for the bridge itself, it became a symbol, a testament to the idea that even in the darkest places, light can emerge. A plaque was installed nearby, commemorating Khalil's act of bravery and encouraging others to follow his example. People came from miles away to visit, leaving flowers, notes, and tokens of gratitude. Some even brought carts, placing them beside the plaque as a tribute to Faith, the makeshift companion that had carried Khalil through his hardest days. In the end, Khalil's journey wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about proving that everyone has value, regardless of circumstance. It was about showing that kindness, no matter how small, can spark change. And most importantly, it was about reminding us all that we are stronger together than we are alone. As Khalil often said, you don't have to be seen to matter, but when someone sees you, really sees you, it makes all the difference. So, as the sun set over the city, casting golden hues across the skyline, Khalil stood beneath the bridge one last time. Not as a homeless boy clinging to survival, but as a man who had transformed pain into purpose. He smiled, knowing the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he also knew this: the world was brighter when we chose to care, and sometimes that was enough.